Hello chess friends and welcome to Zarov's chess channel and welcome to our best chess games of all time series. So in this series we're following the best chess games that have been ever played in chess history, and today it's time for another great game. Today I wanted to show you a great game played by Wei Yi against Lazaro Bruzon Batista. The game was played in 2015. Back in 2015 Wei Yi was only 15 years old. In 2015 it was, I think, a very important year for Wei Yi as he became the world's youngest 2700 rated player in history, so it was a great thing, I think, for him to manage to do that. Today I wanted to show you this game which shows really this attacking skills of Wei Yi. He created really a great king hunt, so let's check out this game. This was really great attacking game played by Wei Yi. E4 played by Wei Yi. We have C5 by Lazaro Bruzon Batista, knight to F3, E6, knight to C3, and Batista played the move A6. Counterplaying on the queen side, which is sort of a delaying move after d4. Immediately, I think c takes d4 can happen, knight takes d4, and bishop to b4 is sometimes the pinning idea of blacks. In the game, Wei Yi played a normal move, bishop to e2. After knight to c6, we have d4, c takes d, knight takes d, and now queen to c7. Which is sort of a con setup of the Sicilian. It seems sometimes to me in this particular Sicilian setups that black has really these weaknesses on dark squares, but black will improve the position on dark squares in a couple of moves. Here castling played by Wei Yi, simply a healthy developing move, and now knight to f6. We have bishop to e3 with preparations to play f4, maybe even g4 if the position allows it, and Batista continued also with healthy development with bishop to e7. F4, we have d6. Now the pawn structure has changed in sort of a chevening style. This chevening style is, of course, it seems like a passive setup as you have only gained on the 6th rank. Your opponents are basically on the 6th rank. You haven't counterplayed in the center on the 5th rank already, but there is a good thing about this pawn structure. This pawn structure always allows us a certain flexibility. For instance, if white pushes the pawn on f5, then we can pass through with potential e5. The same thing if the position opens with potential e5 moves, then we could maybe counterplay with d5. But in order to make that happen, you have to get out with your knight somewhere. This knight could be sometimes deflected from the defense of the king, so it could be a problem if white manages to get this e5 pawn breakthrough happen. So there are still this common ideas of blacks to play maybe on the queen side with b5, b4, but the problem from black's perspective is that white has castled also on the king side, so b5 would be a good idea if white would have castled on the queen side. So in the game, king to h1 played by Wei Yi, a very important idea, as there are always some threats on dark squares if the queen comes, for instance, on b6, attacking the b2 pawn. So first securing the king, and now we have castling also by Batista. We have queen to e1, which is also a common idea of these types of setups, getting the queen to the g3 or an h4, where the queen will create enormous attacks against black's king. So what to do here from black's perspective? Here Batista tried the correct move, I think, knight to d4, bishop takes d4, but now b5 could be really dangerous already. Maybe even e5, I think, immediately would be sort of an idea, but the problem is that you have also weakened your d5 square, then it could be occupied by a knight. So in the game, Batista tried the move b5, and now Wei Yi tried the move queen to g3. It seems now that b4 is a possibility to deflect the knight from the defense of this e4 pawn, but then the game becomes really tactical after potential e5, a counterplay. After d takes e5, we have bishop takes e5. That's the main goal here, attacking the queen. You cannot cover with the bishop, then you get bishop takes f6. With this queen, we could create again some dangerous checkmate threats. So after queen to b6, now knight to e4 would be very dangerous. So you see, it's not so easy for Batista to open the position on the queen side to attack this knight, trying to deflect this knight from this defense of the e4. So this is a very dangerous position already for white. So that's why Batista tried, instead of this b4 move, he tried bishop to b7, and now comes a3. Now finally Wei Yi covers the b4 square. We never allow now again Batista to make this pawn breakthrough happen. So in the game rook to d8, we have rook to e1. Now you see Wei Yi has coordinated all of his pieces on the king side. Now it's time to get some kind of a pawn breakthrough. In the game rook to d7. And the idea behind this move rook to d7 is to play, for instance, rook to d8 and then maybe create a pawn breakthrough. If you play here the immediate pawn breakthrough, I think it's again very dangerous, because after e takes d5, you have to take with the bishop. That's the main problem, or with the pawn, because you cannot take with the knight. The checkmate threat is always present on g7, so you would be forced to give up the bishop pair in an early stage of the game in such an open position. After knight takes d5, maybe rook takes d5 is the possibility, but now bishop to e5 is the counterattack of white. If you move the queen, for instance, c8, then f5, cracking the position, and I guarantee you this is a great position for the bishops aiming against black's king. With the support of these two rooks on the f and e file, I think black is simply lost. So after the move, as I said, rook to e1, rook to d7 was played, preparing more this d5 move, and also trying maybe to cover the 7th rank if something happens. And Wei Yi simply continued to improve the position of his pieces with the move bishop to d3. Now there is again this threat to get this pawn breakthrough happen with move e5. Then this bishop would aim against this very weak h7 square. The problem of black's perspective, from black's perspective, is again that you have only one defender in front of the king. You have only this knight as a minor piece defender. This is really a lack of defenders. Too many attackers are dancing around your king. So in the game, queen to d8, sort of a maneuver idea here by Batista, but now queen to h3. Now this is really a serious threat. e5. When the knight gets somewhere, then here with the checkmate threat on h7. So that's why g6, and this g6 of course prevents this checkmate idea, but the g6 move is another weakening pawn structure move. Again, we have forced black now to weaken the pawn structure further, and now comes the move f5, cracking the position in front of black's king. You have to move, of course, close the center, because this bishop's activity was also a huge one. And in the game, bishop to e3 played by Wei Yi, and now we have rook to e8. The problem is now, if you, for instance, would have played here with the move d5 counterplaying, then again, e takes d5 is white's main idea. The problem is you cannot take with the knight. Then you get knight takes d5, bishop takes d5, and now comes a very, very nasty move f6. The problem is you cannot take after rook takes f6, queen takes f6, queen takes d7, so your bishop is hanging. If you take, for instance, here with the bishop, then again I think we would have simply a potential f takes g6. After h takes g6, the position is again much more weakened here. Again, we would have possibilities to play something like bishop to g5, creating a double attack on the knight. So again, this rook is a little bit overloaded. And now after something like rook to b7, we could even try queen to h4, attacking this pawn, attacking this knight 3 times. So you see, there is something wrong in this position of blacks. In the game, after the move bishop to e3, d5 wasn't played. Here black tried rook to e8, and now Wei Yi simply took. F takes g6, we have h takes g6, and now comes this move knight to d5. This is really a cracking move, because if you take here with the bishop again, then we would have again this move e takes d5, again with the possibilities to play on this pinning idea. It's a little bit overload and pinning idea, because after bishop to g5, the queen is always a little bit stuck here to the defense of this rook. If you even move the rook, then again this bishop to a g5 idea could work, or we could even try rook to f3, rook to g3 ideas with sacrifices by the bishop on g6. So this is really a bad position for black with his 2 bishops aiming against black's king. So that's why in the game, after knight takes d5, we have knight takes d5, not bishop takes d5, but now Wei Yi finds really a great tactic. So you can pause the video and try to find the best next move. It's really a great great attacking move, which leads now into a complicated game for black. And the move by Wei Yi was rook takes f7, sacrificing the rook. After king takes, we have queen to h7, attacking the king. King has to move here to e6. If the king comes on a dark square, then we have again this possibility to play rook to f1, really creating again further attacking possibilities. In the game, king to e6 was played, but now e takes d5, very nice move. And now after king takes d5, now Wei Yi shows really his attacking skills, because it seems now that black has escaped. Black can escape, of course, c6, c7, but now bishop to e4. Never allow this king to come on c6. When that happens, white is simply lost with the whole rook down. So that's why king to e4. We have queen to f7, cutting off this very important square again for the king, with immediate checkmate threats on f3 even here. So that's why here bishop to f6 had to be played, and now bishop to d2. We have king to d4, bishop to e3 again, king to e4, but now queen to b3. Here the queen is using now again the new diagonal in order to deliver checkmate on d3. In the game, king to f5, here Batista is desperately trying to escape with the king, but now rook to f1. You have only one square. Here the king on g4 has to be played, and now queen to d3 again with some check possibilities here on e2. In the game, bishop takes g2 was played. Maybe a better idea here is to play rook to g7, which prolongs the game a little bit. But again, it's problematic because you get h3 after king to h4. We would have the opportunity to play bishop to f2. You have only one square. Queen to e2 is again sort of a possibility, but now after bishop to e3, here king to h2 is the main tactical idea, with preparations to play g3 and deliver checkmate. So that's why here after the move queen to d3, as I said, the main threat was to play queen to e2. Batista tried to sacrifice the bishop. Bishop takes g2, king takes g2, not a problem. But now queen to a8. Here Wei Yi simply retreated with the king, but still black's king is too endangered here. In the game, bishop to g5, queen to e2 was played, king to h4. It's very easy now to find for Wei Yi the best moves. They are basically checks. Great king hunt so far. King to h3, and now bishop to e1 in this position. Batista resigned, because there is now the problem. The main threat, of course, of white is to deliver checkmate on g2. So that's why the queen has to stay on light squares. If the queen moves from the light squares, then you get queen to g2. So that's why you can maybe try rook to f8. But now after rook takes f8, again you cannot take the rook. Again, queen to g2 follows. Let's see what happens if the queen stays on light squares here. If you play something like queen to d5, then rook to f3 is the main tactical threat. After something like king to g4, we would have queen to g2, here king to h4, and now rook to h3. You can cover with the bishop, but now rook takes h4, and it will be game over. So as I said, after the move bishop to e1, Batista resigned. There is nothing you can do. This king is really cornered here, attacked by the queen, rook, and the bishop. Too much of overloads of pinning ideas here by Wei Yi. Black was really helpless. Black couldn't find an escape route, of course, but this was really a great sacrifice. Rook takes f7. Let's go back to this critical moment here. Great rook takes f7, king takes queen to h7. Now to take the pawn, to take the knight on d5 after king takes d5. Now this was, I think, the critical move, bishop to e4, deflecting the king again towards the center, which is the most important thing. And now queen to f7. Never allow this king to breathe, and you see how this game was very well played by Wei Yi. He is still a great player, I think, but there is, I think, something wrong with his development. Wei Yi is still on the same level like he was maybe 4 years ago. So I don't know, maybe there are now too many great grandmasters, also too many of these chess prodigies. We'll see what will happen with Wei Yi's career. He's still an attractive one to watch. He plays always this tactical battles. He's similarly like to Ding Liren. They really have this similar attacking style. But as I said, this was really, I think, one of his best chess plays in his career. He played this game, which is an incredible thing, at the age of 15 years old. So great, great game. If you want to see more games like this, you can also check out my other best chess games of all time with some more great tactics, with some great queen sacrifices, rook sacrifices, and many, many more. And you can also watch my commented chess games played by computers with some Alpha Zero, Lila Zero, Stockfish games, and some other engine games. And you can also subscribe to my channel if you like this content. Thank you for watching, guys, and chess is the best, of course.